Hi, I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk. It's our fourth episode where the panellists and the host are unashamedly and unapologetically social conservatives. Now, you can watch this on our website. You can go to familyfirst.nz, and if you just scroll down the page there, you'll see the feed. Or you can watch on our YouTube channel, which is Family First NZ, or you can go to our Facebook page. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube, the advantage is that you can share your comments to the panel and submit any questions you may have. Now, our topics tonight include an update on that incredibly difficult question, what is a woman? We cover your feedback on our discussion from the last episode on the Maori naming of government departments. We discuss Easter trading, the legacy of Jacinda Ardern after her recent valedictory speech, and if we've got time, we'll touch on the recent polling, and the panel will make some completely unreliable predictions for the general election. Now, we had a computer explode just before our second episode, and then we had Easter break last week. But to the panel, sorry guys, my warning is that we're in for the long haul now. Our next break is King's birthday weekend. Yeah, King's birthday, not Queen's birthday, but it's a long weekend, so that's all that matters. Does any of you guys know, and ladies, got to be careful here, any of you guys and ladies know when the King's birthday actually is, the birth date? I'll give you a Family First umbrella if you can tell me.
November.
That's half an umbrella.
The 19th.
Close, day before. Pity you missed out. And team, you will have all noticed that we have an infiltrator. Finally, we have got our long-awaited sixth panellists. Because see, we had that image at the start of our program that showed six panellists. And so it's a big welcome to Ala Pomalele, based in Auckland. Ala, welcome. Christine is stoked to have you join her on Team Female.
I am. Welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, team. I look forward to getting cancelled, so it's a pleasure.
Oh, hey, look, Ronji's already there. Ronji, how are you in South Auckland?
Can someone cancel me quickly, please? Because it's a long year. I don't want to be on the show the whole time. Thank you.
Well, the problem is that you keep having trouble finding your button to turn the mic on. That's the problem. Directly below you in the Brady Bunch is Alfred Nato, who is in West Auckland. How are you, Alfred?
Doing well.
I've always wanted to ask you, Alfred, in Parliament, were you ever called a crybaby?
No. And I think I'd said to you, Bob, that the only time I cried was actually when we passed the abortion law reforms under Jacinda Ardern's leadership.
Yeah. Ironic.
Cried for babies.
Exactly. Down to the deep south, and it's Bruce Logan. Whose phone was that? That was a $50 donation to Family First. I bet it was you, Christine.
It was.
I knew it.
Well,
It was Winston.
you didn't give me that umbrella, so you're not getting $50.
Hello, Christine. Hello, Bruce, and Ashley out on the East Coast. Ashley, I've got a special treat for you because as part of our free speech moment, you know that I've been having trouble getting you guys to stop at 90 seconds. I'm still going to give you at 60, but when we get to 90 seconds, you're going to hear this sound.
Yeah, so that's the noise that you hear when you win the Renfrew Shield in Hawke's Bay, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, I thought so. Okay, well, let's get straight into it. Yeah, that's right. So let's get enough talking from all of you guys. We've got an hour to get through. So, Ashley, we're going to start with you, actually, for your free speech moment, and you have 90 seconds, and you're talking about choosing your role models carefully, so your 90 seconds starts now.
Yeah, Bob, so a while back I watched an episode of An Audience with Adele. She's an extraordinary talent, and I'm a huge fan of her music, but I'm not sure I'd want her as a role model for my grandkids. And in the show, Bob, Adele was singing various songs from her catalogue in between expletive-laden rants in which she answered random questions from a star-studded audience of some of the biggest names in show business. But here's the thing. While I admired many of these entertainers and sports people for their acting, musical, and physical abilities, Many of them, along with many others in the entertainment industry, were also vocal advocates for some of the value realignment being foisted upon us in the name of the so-called progressive agenda, comfortable in their self-belief that their entertainment credentials qualify them to be experts in such matters when mostly they're not. At one level, that's okay. At 59, I can distinguish between the artistic value of a performer and their twisted ideology and lifestyles, and in any case, it's a free society and they're entitled to voice their opinions as much as I am. But sadly, our kids often can't distinguish that difference and end up being confused in their admiration for an entertainer with the rightness of that individual's life, ideas and values. That means that people who are portrayed as worthy by virtue of their ability to read a script, hold a tune or kick a ball, but hold moral values diametrically opposed to yours and mine, can become their default role models and the standard by which they judge the rightness of a position. We can't stop the avalanche of this stuff, but we can be aware of what our kids are being exposed to and ready to counter those views with our wiser guidance. So to do less is to abdicate our responsibility to those that we love the most.
Oh, there we go. Perfect timing. That's what you call scoring right on the full-time button. Okay, let's go slightly west of you to Christine. And Christine, you're not even going to take your 90 seconds, are you? But you just want to make a comment about education. We'll give you 90 seconds starting now.
Oh, you're very kind. Look, one of our disaster areas in this country, and today there was a big orchestrated announcement. Apparently the Prime Minister flew somewhere special to make this announcement. And what it actually turns out to be is one less child per classroom. One less child. An extra 6 seconds an hour for a teacher to devote to the rest. How pathetic can you get? No need to say any more.
Okay, and we will come back to that topic. I think we'll dedicate one of the topics next week to just talking about education, because a number of parties are making statements here. Christine, I do want to say that your whole setup is looking glamorous. What have you done? I mean, it's just a great shot.
You told me to turn down the lights so nobody could
Very
see my
romantic.
wrinkles. Turn down the lights and just light up what was behind me, so I did.
It's just a great camera shot. Well done. It's probably that special stand we sent you for your iPad that helps.
It is definitely the stand that has contributed, yes,
Okay.
but you can't see the wrinkles. I'm very happy.
Okay, well, let's drop the standard and looks and go to Ronji. And Ronji, your topic is, do Conservatives really care? And your 90 seconds starts now.
No, thanks, Bob. Hey, my question is, do Conservatives really care about social issues? Homelessness, overcrowding, youth at risk, broken families, addictions, treatment, mental health, and so on. Look, I know the answer is obviously yes. I know Conservatives care. But I think sometimes Conservatives are great at getting angry at the social problems without providing good solutions and good innovation. I believe those on the left have cornered the market on caring. The so-called progressives are great at organizing themselves. They're great at influencing young people in media, and they're great at promoting to the world that they care more than anyone else about these social issues. I went to a meeting today about housing issues, about homelessness and overcrowding and transitional housing and emergency housing, and the list goes on. It was full of academics and professors, young lawyers, advocates, journalists, community groups. Nearly all of them, or actually all of them, were raging lefties who promoted the fact that they cared for these issues more than anyone else. But they were coming at it from socialist angles, more government control, more taxes, more ideology. I was the only one in that room that battled their perspectives and worldviews, but I battled with numbers, policy ideas, and a heart to see change. Conservatives by their nature are conservative, but maybe Conservatives have gone into little echo chambers where we rage against the machine, but we don't offer any good ideas or solution. That needs to change.
I just want to do it just for the full time. Well done. Now let's go down south and Bruce. And Bruce, your topic is calling evil good and calling good evil, I assume. 90 seconds.
Something like that.
Your 90 seconds, just to remind you, Bruce, that it's 90 seconds. And at the end of 90 seconds, you'll get that. Your 90 seconds, Bruce, starts now.
Well, Christopher Marlowe's The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus is my favourite play, or just about my favourite play. Faust in the play discovers in his search to turn basic metals into gold that he can't do it. He's a jaded old alchemist who has missed out on the delights of youth. In the fog of timid despair, he conjures up Lucifer, if you know the play, that fading angel of light, in the hope that he will store his youth And Lucifer sends his right-hand demon, Mephistopheles, complete with his black cloak and red lining. Sorry, Canterbury. Faustus makes the archetype Faustian bargain. So in a fudge of smoke and mirrors, Mephistopheles gives Faustus 20 years of voluptuous youth in exchange for his soul. He must never repent. He tells Faust, I am the spirit that constantly negates for everything you call sin. Destruction and evil is my true element. The progressive wokerati would have the rest of us believe that forever, and damn us if we don't, that self-creation is omnipotent. Isaiah understood. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, and put darkness for light and light for darkness, and put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. The overreaching self-creators might discover the hell is where you hold up a protest sign forever. My rights are human rights, damned by a tautology.
That was perfect, Bruce. That was awesome. And now I'm going to have to go around to Alfred's place and Ronji's and explain exactly what you talked about. But that's okay. I'll give them the help. Right, let's...
I thought you were talking another language, but it sounded really cool. That was awesome. Thanks, Bruce.
What was that play you said at the beginning, Bruce? I don't think I've seen that play. What is it?
Well, it's a very famous play. Marlowe was a contemporary of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
A bit of a tearaway, and it's the tragical history. It's based on a German myth, and he was a tearaway. Poor old Christopher got murdered in a pub brawl one day.
Okay.
Maybe it was one night.
Okay.
That was after
If there's pubs and there's brawls going on, I'm down for that kind of play.
Okay.
It was all set in South Auckland.
Let's simplify everything and go to Alfred. And Alfred, do you want to talk about left or right? So your 90 seconds starts now.
Yeah, so politics often they talk about are you left or you're right. When they talk about left, they often refer to more socialist parties like the Labour Party and the Greens Party. If you're right, they refer to more the National Party or the ACT Party. I remember that when I was in Parliament, I would call myself, I'm a centre-right person and a politician, a conviction politician, really. But what I've noticed now is that there's been a huge attack and a challenge on what they would call far-right conservatism. Andrea Vance wrote an article and stuff during the weekend, and she talked about the National Party, and she called it the National so-called Taliban faction, an in-house reference to ultra-conservative Christians in the National Caucus. You know, I remember that Bill Ralston once called Simon Bridges and myself the Taliban, in other words, the far-right conservatives. She went on to say the influence of socially conservative Christian MPs. And here's what she says, but they're candidates elected locally and they have infiltrated the local branches in the upper north. You know, this is straight out of the playbook of the Misinformation Project with Kate Hanna, where often they talk about it's the far-right conservative Christian views. And I just want to say that it's not about far right and far left, actually it's now about what's right and what's wrong. And at the moment, we don't have the tools to discern, and what's more concerning is that we're not, as conservatives, as Ronji said, standing up to talk about our views and our values that have been critically important to this nation.
You guys have been practicing, I can tell. That is very impressive. Now, the good news is that we gave Ala a get-out-of-jail-free pass as her special first week. So we are looking forward to her free speech moment the next time. But I just realised that I haven't had the chance. So I'm going to start my 90 seconds, and it starts now. Luxon was on News Hub Nation at the weekend, that taxpayer-funded version of Straight Talk, but not half as good. He was asked some quick-fire questions, and just show me the video clip.
Told me all sorts of things. So.
How would you describe your parenting style?
Pretty empowering. I mean, it's evolved over time. Amanda and I have always had a model. 0 to 5 we're caretakers, 5 to 12 we're cops, 12 to 18 we're coaches, and 18 plus we're consultants. So we've moved into, and our thing as a parent, you know, it's the journey into yourself, and you've actually got to keep, you know, changing gears in yourself rather than trying to force your child to be like you.
That's good advice.
Okay, so I thought that was pretty good. Caretakers, cops, coaches and consultants. It's a pretty cool statement how our role changes as parents as our kids grow up, ultimately aiming to be coaches and consultants. I mean, it's a crude summary, but for normal thinking parents, we get what they're saying. As the child matures, our role becomes different at each stage. We step back because of the work we've done during the early stages. Type of great teaching that Ian and Mary Grant were so popular with. Now, this particular quote came from Bruce Johnston, who's the founder and president of JH Ranch, which runs weekend events across the US and around the world where parents and their children attend a camp of fun and teaching which strengthens their relationships with each other and for God. And it's great for families. There's a New Zealand version, and full disclosure, one of my children has been involved as a leader there. But according to some Twitterers today who got all heated about it, it's the end of the world. It's all part of the fundy SHIT involving other fundy organisations, and that Luxon must take all his advice from terrible people like American evangelists who are running a summer camp grift. Anything that mentions Christianity is public enemy number one, and this is how they want to destroy Luxon. Now, this is a sad level of commentary that you get on Twitter, all heat, little substance, and to be honest, it's hard not to sink to that level when you're on it. The moral of the story is stay off Twitter or spend the minimum amount of time there that you need to. I actually saw a funnier version of a parent. 0 to 5 years we're nurses and personal chefs, 5 to 12 we're teachers, 12 to 18 we're taxi drivers, and 18 plus parents become personal bankers. There we go, perfect 90 seconds, right. Okay, thank you team. Let's move on to our first topic, and firstly, it's a quick update of what is a woman. And we have received responses from all the major political leaders now. And look, Chris Hipkins isn't the only one struggling to answer it concisely. Let's just have a look at that summary, Gordon. Here's the updated responses from the major political parties, and then I'll just go around the panel and see if they want to comment on this. We're only just missing the Maori party in terms of the ones in Parliament. So we heard Chris Hipkins' excruciating response last time. Chris Luxon was asked the question. He answered adult female human, so that was a good start. But then he clarified or continued to say there is a very small number of people who identify with a gender that's different from the sex they had at birth. They need to be respected as well. And so, you know, that's pretty straightforward for me to think about. So, I don't know, does he want a bit of both sides? David Seymour was asked. He was asked and he said adult human female. Winston Peters was asked. He said adult human female, my late mother was one. And as we know, Marama Davidson says, trans woman, are woman, Tao Maori was never so boring as binary. So just quickly around the panel, and Ala, I might start with you, Senior, at the top left. Got any response? I mean, and as a woman on the panel, and I'll go to Christine next, why are we having so much trouble defining this word?
I'm here to get those answers from you guys. I mean, for myself, the Bible's pretty clear. God made mankind male and female. Female being a woman, being an adult human female. If we want to get specific, an adult is any member of a species that's reached their average for reproduction for members of their species. A human being a member of the Homo sapiens species, and a female being someone whose reproductive anatomy is reorganized or organized around through the development of the production of gametes called eggs. So if you don't have those particulars, then you would be in the other camp called man. So yeah, it's pretty clear to me. I'm not sure what fuzzy glasses our politicians have around the world, but I think there's just a whole lot of gutless leaders who aren't standing up for women. That's what it is, point blank. You
agree with that, Christine?
Yeah, I do. Well done, you. I think those answers are a microcosm of our crazy world at the moment. I despair. I don't know what else to say, really.
Alfred, I think we asked you this last time, but as a politician, you've always got to think your answers through. And I mean, I think we sort of saw that whirring of the brain of our Prime Minister when he was asked the question, and he sort of knew that somehow he had to answer it to appease both sides. Is that kind of how a politician has to come to these tricky questions?
Well, I think the answer is actually in the three white porcelain monkeys on Christine's desk. And if you see them, they reflect the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And really that's what, you know, when you've got personality politics and popularity politics, all you're trying to do is to appease a certain group, because at the end of the day, it's about the votes, and out of the votes you get the numbers and you get into power. And so it is a concern. I think that the word conviction and conservative conviction values has often been missing from a number of these leaders, and it makes you ask the question, so why did you go there in the first place?
Okay, you agree with that, Ashley?
Oh, yeah, I do. And it's interesting because that worrying that you talk about, that thinking through the answer in the case of both Luxon and Hipkins, that's the process of realising you're about to say something stupid and trying to work out how you can justify it. And it took Hipkins a long time to do that, and he didn't actually accomplish that goal. But the National Party is the one that concerns me, because they seem to have, and Alfred might have a view on this, but they seem to have this sort of stereotypical idea in their head of what the typical voter looks like. And that voter, for me, doesn't actually exist anywhere outside the Beltway in Wellington. It looks nothing like real New Zealand. It looks nothing like most people. It doesn't even look like the typical Labour voter. And yet it seems to inform everything that comes out of Luxon's mouth. It's bizarre.
Okay. Ronji, what do you reckon?
Look, I've got no real faith in politics or politicians, or especially our leaders, to be honest. I thought when I see that stuff happening, it was a lot around convenient leadership rather than courageous leadership, or I like the word that Alfred used. He talked about conviction. I guess for me, I mean, some of it might be convenient, it might be quite political, but I wonder if these guys are actually true believers in what they're saying. I tend to think they might be, because then they're placing their ideology over truth. And I think that's the challenge there, is when we contend against some of this woke ideology that comes from the left, we have to contend with truth. The moment we start laying down our weapons and laying down truth and facts and so on, that's when we start losing those major battles. So I actually think, yeah, it's convenient politics. It's leadership that wants to appease everyone. But I actually think some of these politicians are true believers in what they're saying, and ideology for them trumps truth.
Okay, and just finally, Bruce, do you want to wrap this up? Why are we having so much trouble?
Well, you maybe, and we mumble. Back in the 60s, I can remember when I was a graduate student, we had a definition for absurdity. And it was the ability to hold two ideas in your head, two conflicting ideas in your head at once, and believe both of them. No one took it seriously, but now we do. We have lost belief in an ordered world. Scientific method won't do any longer. So I am what I feel. That is the great lie, and it's the consequence of what has become known, of course, as the death of God. And the death of God, as its most famous exponent once said, Friedrich Nietzsche, pointed out, with God's death, so do human beings die. And here we are in our culture in our death throes. I can remember a little quote that comes to mind, something like, "As flies to wanton boys we are to the gods, they kill us for their sport, or even better, those whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad." So we're in a pandemic of bonkers, it seems, and now the disease is even beyond the powers of Pfizer.
I'll remember that one, a pandemic of bonkers. That's going to be our reel on TikTok tomorrow. Watch out for it. Now, just a quick comment that we saw. Veronica says, great to have you tonight, Allah. So there we are. There's a nice little welcome. And Christine and Brendan says some very good points in Ashley's speech, particularly around how children and minors might handle free speech when it is outside of their capacity. And Aaron says, wowzers, sharp team tonight. And there was one other that I saw. You got to see this, guys. Craig said, Bob's hair looks good. Okay, moving on. Right, the Maori naming of government departments. Okay, now we got some feedback. We always get a lot of feedback, and you can email us at straighttalk@familyfirst.org.nz. But Clayton and Tony said, we love this new segment so much. You cover a great range of subjects. It's fantastic to hear different but all sensible views on the subject, except for you, Ronji, of course, all discussed with respect and fun banter towards each other. So refreshing in our society today. Through these discussions, we're armed with information and facts that we can use when we are doing life with friends, families and co-workers. And we're grateful to the panel members who give up their time to be a part of this by them standing up and being willing to have these tough conversations. It's helping us do the same. So there we are. That was the positive one. Now for the negative one. You don't get it about the naming of government departments in Maori. When I have a problem, I don't know where to go with it because their names are obscured to me. It seems too hard and complicated. I recently did have a problem. I thought it was Wakakotahi I must go to. It turned out it was supposed to be Auckland City. That seems obvious after the fact, but beforehand I was caught up in thinking, where will I find who to deal with it? I totally agree with Winston, like you, Ashley. Winston is not dividing people by pointing this out. He's making a good point. That's from Roberta. And then Harvey said, listening to your panel discussion, I think they lost the plot over Winston's remarks about changing the names of departments from English to Maori. However, I think the panel were being very PC in its response. I couldn't believe my ears. It is common sense to stick with the old English names of departments and agencies. So, some positive feedback and some negative feedback. Now, just before I get your response, and the question I want to put to you is this, is basically, should we have government departments as English, as Maori, or bilingual? I think that's where the debate is. But just before we do that, and seeing I've played a little bit of Christopher Luxon tonight, I just want to play the little excerpt of Winston Peters where he talked about this at his State of the Nation. So let's just watch that clip.
Under New Zealand First, we will change all the woke virtue signalling names of every government department back to English. Back to what they were before the academics from university sociology departments started this madness a few years ago. And it's not an attack on the Maori language. I was here when the first funding for Maori language ever started in my political career, and I'm proud of it. But it's an attack on the elite virtue signalers who have hijacked the language for their own socialist means. This conceited, conniving cultural cabal doesn't represent hard-working ordinary Maori. They only seek to use Maori to further their own agenda.
Okay, so this is the question. Should we allow change of government departments to Māori? Should we give both Māori and English, or should we stick to English only? Let's start with you, Bruce. What do you reckon?
Well, a few years ago, I thought I noticed a tendency for Maori words to be added to the English words in a variety of situations, which seemed to me to be a reasonable kind of idea. You had the English word and underneath, maybe in brackets or some kind of print, the Maori word, which seemed quite fine. But now the Maori word is being imposed on us as the primary name of an institution or the primary name of something else, which is confusing, certainly for someone my age who has to try and remember what the words are, and I tend to get lost in them. So it's not a grassroots movement either from the Pākehā or from Maori. It's an imposition from above that's driven by a particular kind of ideology, which I don't have time to talk about it tonight, but it's about the imposition of the beginnings of a civil religion. And that's, maybe we get a bit of chance to talk about that sometime. But I don't like the idea. I don't like the way it's being imposed on us. I'm happy to use the words and learn the language, but I'm not happy to have it imposed on me so that I get lost when I go out.
Okay, Ashley, do you agree with that? Because I think last time you said, look, this isn't a battle worth fighting for, you know, suck it up.
Oh, look, my view's even stronger than that. Let me just say to those people, and I don't want to lose any of your viewers, but let me just say to anybody who thinks that you can conflate racism with conservatism, you can't. They are not the same thing. Look, to be a good conservative is about concern for all people and all people groups. It's not about basically focusing on white issues and protecting the old sort of ways and languages. As far as I'm concerned, Māori, whether it is actually in actuality or is by inference, is an official language of this country, and it should be accorded the same respect and the same importance as English should. And people who talk about English being a universal language are not only missing the point, but they're exhibiting a type of racism which I'm really uncomfortable with. Where I do have some concession with them is there probably should be an edict with government departments around making sure that they provide both names, so that the old diggers who aren't familiar with Māori and who need that comfort of the older names have still got some familiarity and can actually know what those departments are. And I have some sympathy with that, because there's a lot of these new names that have come in where I actually don't know what the department is because I haven't been educated in the new name. But this idea that you can conflate conservatism and even Christianity with a form of racism around language doesn't fly at all well with me.
Okay, Roger, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
Look, I think it's a little bit of a non-issue, to be honest. I mean, but it is an issue for some, and some of your viewers have said that, and that's all good. I can understand that. I can understand the challenge of being imposed these words and so on. But Man, to be honest, there's other hills that are worth dying on, and for me, this is not one of them. We've got things around the education curriculum. We've got this anti-Christianity push that comes through media. We're in a financial and economic mess as a country, and the list goes on and on. I'd rather focus on some of those battles and some of those hills than this one here. There's some truth in it. There's wokeness and virtue signaling. We need to define the terms, but man, there's other hills worth fighting on.
Ala, do you agree with that?
Yeah, probably just wanted to add that Winston was in the first one to raise concerns or dislike about this use of Te Reo Māori with government agency names. I'm pretty sure last year around June, Kitty Ellen raised concerns with DOC using Te Reo Māori as a tokenistic way of demonstrating cultural competency, and that's what it just looks like, another smoke screen for that, another distraction from the bigger issues that Ronji highlighted. So I think I'm for the bilingual use of it, but I think it doesn't sound like they've gone through the appropriate ways of consulting with these names. So as Bruce said, it's been imposed on us, so it sounds like it's been imposed on the public sector too.
Christine, when you were head of WINS, was there pressure to go down this track?
It was just starting at that time. The public sector always leads these movements. And the other point I wanted to make, and I agree with the previous speakers, but a lot of New Zealanders don't understand that when the government comes to a settlement with a particular iwi, they give them all kinds of rights and the ability to do things, and sharing the language is one of those things. And I agree, I don't like the attitude of people that say we can't share the language or we can't be tolerant of this. That is racist to me. Do you want it all your way? Life's not like that. We don't get just one path. You've got to negotiate your way down that path and meet everybody's needs. And there is nothing wrong with recognising an official language in New Zealand that's not English. And it's frustrating that people equate that to not being a conservative. I am definitely a conservative. No problem with sharing the language. I agree that government departments should probably have the English word right up there so that those of us who don't want to or can't can understand what it is.
Okay, and Alfred, finally, I mean, this is an issue close to your heart. What do you think?
Well, political leadership is not always about, what you do, but often it's about how you do it that matters. And in this case, as everyone has said, you've got to take people with you. Look, I'll give a really quick example. In 1999, at the Rugby World Cup in Twickenham, Hene Wehi did something outrageous to everyone in the country and even in the stadium. She sung God Defend New Zealand in Te Reo Māori. And look, everyone was confused. Everyone was really angry. In fact, the vitriol that came back was was really tough on her. But the thing is that the New Zealand Rugby Union in the end said, look, we'd rather have both rather than just one. And so all of a sudden you had this transition of change. What people don't realise is that, our national anthem was written by Thomas Bracken in 1875. 3 years afterwards, the Maori version was written in 1878. So Maori language has always been there, the translation, but we've just never had the courage to activate it. Hene Wehi just basically came and did that. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that sometimes change can be by choice, but it can be by circumstance. And it may be that I think part of the courage is taking people with us, but also to speaking out. And I agree with the comments that conservatism is not about racism. It's not about discriminating. Actually, it's about including all people, all races. That's what that national anthem actually says. God of nations. It's all people inclusive.
Okay, panel, quick test. I'm going to hold up some names of government organisations. I'd just like you to tell me what they are. Here's the first one. It's it's the Interim New Zealand Health Plan for 2022. So it's not actually a government department. No, okay. What's that?
New Health
New
Department.
Zealand.
Yes, well done.
Yeah.
That one?
NZTA.
That's Ministry of Transport.
Yeah, that's because Ashley gets a lot of letters from them, usually with a fine.
It's true.
That one?
That's the Housing Initiative.
Housing?
The old
I know.
housing call.
I've done all the easy ones to start with.
That's children.
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 Okay, let's make this a bit harder. Bruce will know this one. Bruce? It's it's Retirement Commission.
Oh, there you go.
Ashley will know
down the
this.
road from me.
Ashley will know this one.
Yeah, that's a street down the road from me.
No, that's the finance. That's the Reserve Bank, isn't it?
That's it. Well done, Alfred. Yeah, well done. This one?
Internal Affairs.
I don't know how you guys are ever going to find any of these government departments. This is the Insurance Council.
We're trying to get rid of the bureaucracy, not grow it.
Okay. Now, who will know this one? Allah will know this one. It's the new Firearms Safety Authority.
Of course it is.
What?
There we are.
Of course it is.
You're going to register your firearms. There we are. You should have known that, guys. Am I making a point here? Okay.
No, you picked all the random organisations.
Yeah.
Right, no one knows anyways.
That's something to do with
BNZ.
biscuit making.
No, BNZ.
Oh.
That's not a government organisation.
You guys are hopeless. Commerce Commission.
It's Mariah and Levin.
You know this one.
Oh, that's the Inland Revenue. I know that one.
Inland Revenue. Well done. Just about there. Oh, Bruce will know this one. Bruce. Yeah, Ministry of Education. Well done, Allah. There we are.
Te Pukenga, the new Polytech.
Yes, well done.
Polytech, yes.
Yeah. And
Whānau Tahi.
One
Family.
people of Aotearoa. I don't know what department it is, though.
it's Family First New Zealand, you wallies.
Right.
I can't believe it. And this one's an interesting one. Anybody know this one? So this is the name of the Opotiki Library. And what the council have suggested is that for the people of Opotiki, they actually add the word library so that people know that it's the library, and it's causing a bit of a stir. So, those are just some interesting
By the way,
aspects.
that's where the Whingers have a point. That's where the Whingers have a point. There does need to be both.
Yeah, okay,
Hey,
okay.
hey Bob, you've forgotten one, Bob.
Yeah,
You've forgotten one. It's called Te Manatu Wahine, the Ministry of Women.
well, they're still trying to define the English translation. That's the problem.
That's right.
Right, let's just check some of the comments here. And Elliot says, Mr. Peters is absolutely correct, but he often speaks while being a political weather vane. Ivy Tan says, side issue, just saw the census forms that have both Māori and English side by side, and each question was so confusing to track through and read. Be better if they had them in their own part of the form, so those who choose can easily fill in whether Māori or English. Colin says, old diggers, don't forget visitors to the country won't all understand Māori. That's a fair point to be true. Alana says, how many people speak or read Māori? There are more important issues we should be spending taxpayer money on. And that might be a fair point in terms of how much money are we spending. And Ronald says, we have defined woman very clearly. Likewise, we should define man very clearly. I reckon that those who don't fall in each category should be treated with sensitivity and also with respect to the existing two categories. Okay, let's move on to our next topic, Easter trading. National leader Christopher Luxon is vowing to review our controversial Easter trading laws if elected in 6 times. The Labor government's argument is that Good Friday and Easter Sunday are 2 of only 3.5 days of the year when trading is restricted and workers get some time off to spend with family and friends. The ACT Party proposed a law change last year that would have given businesses the choice to trade at Easter, but it was defeated at first reading. Interestingly, 27 MPs in National and all of ACT's MPs said yes, but Labor's 65, Greens 10 MPs and 6 National MPs, Simeon Brown, Paul Goldsmith, Melissa Lee, Penny Simmons, Tim van der Molen and Michael Woodhouse voted no. And the Workplace Relations Minister for Labor said that ACT didn't get the balance right and instead put business profits ahead of workers' rights, which is why it wasn't supported. And so we put out a media release on this issue supporting Easter trading. So to the panel, what's your view on Easter trading? Ronji, I'm going to start with you. Should the law be liberalised or should we have more public holidays and no trading allowed?
I think I'm with the government on this. I think families need a break. There's not enough that are out there in the calendar. So I think it's probably Luxon cozying up to the business world before the election, but I just think families need a break. keep it as it is.
Okay. Ala, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think in a world consumed with material things and just consume, public holidays are a social good. As you alluded to in the Family First media release, like they're a time for families to be together. Families are a cornerstone of societies as well, and if we're constantly implementing things that hack away at the family unit, I don't think it's a good thing. So public holidays are a good time to pause and encourage families to be together, to be, as what Edmund Burke said, to learn to love the little platoon that they belong to in a society. So if public holidays do that, encourage more family time and community time, I'm for it as well.
Now, Alfred, I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you vote for Easter trading while in Parliament?
Well, I can remember this is when you're an activist. You were banging down my door, telling me how sort of a bad conservative Christian I was. Because what it was is that actually in 2016, Michael Woodhouse actually led the Shop Trading Hours Act in 2016. And, we voted for it, those of us inside the caucus, because it was it was the perception that actually it would allow for localised approaches for communities to decide. I have to say, when I've looked into this, I am very disappointed, because under the Local Government Act of 2002, Clause 83, it talks about special consultative procedures, and that was the whole purpose of allowing communities to decide. But sub-clause 3, it says, if the local authority considers on reasonable grounds that it is necessary to enable public understanding. So I think that what we've done is that we've allowed some local authorities ability to make decisions without the community, and for that, I would say it'll be one of those moments where, I would regret voting for that, because the understanding that we were given is not the reality that our communities face right now. So I would have been one of the 6. I would have been number 7 who would have voted against this proposed amendment. By the way, just really quickly, if you read into the detail, what Chris Bale was actually trying to do with that legislation was to amend and to remove Good Friday and Easter Sunday. So there's a bit more to the detail, I think, that we haven't read into.
Yeah, Chris Bailey from ACT. Ashley, what do you think? I mean, there is a valid argument that the current law is inconsistent, but then you could say, okay, well, you chuck out the whole law or you fix the inconsistency.
Well, I'm going to come at it from a different angle, because I think that the reason that conservatives, the elephant in the room here is, I think the reason that conservatives are animated about this is because of the perception that it's a Christian festival or a Christian holiday. And I'm one of these weirdos that actually doesn't believe that Easter is a Christian holiday. If you're animated about wanting to celebrate the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ, then there's an event right next door called Passover, which actually is about that event. Easter's a pagan festival which has been carried over from Catholicism, which was about politically assuaging a group of people 2,000 years ago. So if that's your rationale, then I don't buy into that. If you look at it just as a family event, and the argument that people like Christine and Alfred have just put forward, and that argument, then yeah, I think there probably is an argument that says retain it in its current form. But there's an equal argument that says that we're a multicultural country with people that don't necessarily all share the same faith, and maybe a better system would be to say there's 10 or 15 of these things per year, allow people to take them when they want them. So I'm not quite as animated about this particular event at this particular time.
Yeah, although it does seem interesting that they never want to touch Anzac Day. There's been no mention about making that a full trading day.
Give it time.
Well, that's exactly the argument. So therefore, what happens about the coercion of workers who don't have a choice? They have to turn up to work. I think that's a fair assessment that Labor have made. Bruce, what's your thoughts? Are we just defending this because it's a Christian event?
Well, every civilization has its religious festivals and its religious holidays. It's what marks a civilization. And we have inherited a Christian religion which has given us certain days, in spite of what Ashley says. I think the days are still significant and they are meaningful to a lot of people. They have a traditional understanding and a historical significance that's important for any kind of culture to think and take seriously. And as well as that, holidays have therapeutic value, particularly when they're done in community. You can't really have holidays that any people take at any day of the week when they choose. Holidays are something that we do as a community and a culture that we all are involved in. And they're very important. Even if we are looking at the demise of Christianity, what is going to replace them that is significant and meaningful and will actually give cohesion to the culture? I can't think of anything.
Okay, I think I asked everybody. Did I ask you, Ronji? Oh, did I?
Only me. You
oh, Christine, I'm sorry, Christine. What's your thoughts?
And I was
right.
quoting you, we hadn't even spoken.
The interesting thing about Taupo is that I think you actually were allowed to open, weren't you? They got an exception.
Yeah.
Is that one place?
Yeah. Every major tourist area has the right to open, and we do that, but we do also consult the community on how they feel about it. But for me, I wish that we could give every person the right to choose, and for that to be honoured by employers. You know, do people want to work or don't they? Some people actually do want to work. They earn a whole lot of extra money during this time. And a lot of people value hugely being with their families. And I think you have every right, especially if you have religious beliefs, to do what is precious for you. But that just doesn't seem to work.
Okay, any extra comment, panel? No? Good. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, it was Jacinda Ardern's valedictory speech, which was, 2 weeks ago? And what I'm going to get is each panellist to share firstly 2 to 3 positive things about her legacy, and then maybe 2 to 3 negative things about her leadership and legacy as Prime Minister. Now, just before they do that, while they think about their responses, we're going to play 3 quick excerpts from her valedictory speech. The first bit is about her definition of progress, and that included, amongst other things, banning conversion therapy, and what I felt was the ultimate contradiction of saving lives from guns and decriminalising killing the unborn child. Have a listen.
Politics has never been a tick list for me. It's always been about progress. Sometimes you can measure it and sometimes you can't. We won't ever know the long-term benefits of banning conversion therapy, especially for our young people, or what it means to our Pacific communities that we finally apologise for the Dawn raids. There will be no list of the lives saved because of the banning of military-style semi-automatic weapons. We won't know how we left women feeling about the ability to make their own choices when this Parliament decriminalised abortion, or when we improved pay equity, put period products into schools, or reached 50% representation of women in Parliament.
Oops, there we go. I turned my microphone on. And then there was the second part of her speech where she talked about free speech, which was kind of interesting coming from a government that had been pushing strongly for hate speech laws. Let's have a listen.
I've seen the same fractured debates based on distorted half-truths and complete falsehoods emerging on a range of different subjects. This is not a question of free speech. Free speech is a right this House is unified in defending. Those who try to dress up the issue of disinformation as being an attempt to silence people are ironically themselves shutting down a discussion that must be had.
Okay, and then just finally her very last comment at the end of her speech.
Now, I cannot determine what will define my time in this place, but I do hope I've demonstrated something else entirely, that you can be anxious, sensitive, kind, and wear your heart on your sleeve. You can be a mother or not. You can be an ex-Mormon or not. You can be a nerd, a crier, a hugger. You can be all of these things. And not only can you be here, you can lead just like me.
Okay, so let's go round the panel. The legacy of Jacinda Ardern. We're going to start with a couple of positives. And we'll start at the bottom of the country. Bruce, what were positives that came out of the leadership of Jacinda Ardern?
Well, I can't think of any, but there must be some.
You know, we're supposed to be a charity here.
Well,
Bruce.
Pardon?
Apparently not anymore.
I try hard. I try hard to be kind, but when you get to my age, it's very difficult being kind. You understand?
Okay, we'll come back to you. Raise your hand if you think of one.
Okay, I can think about. Well, yeah, all right. I'll raise my hand.
Okay.
If I'm inspired.
Ashley.
I've got three. I've got three positives. She made the hijab trendy again. And then two things she reminded us of. She reminded us that bad leadership has nothing to do with gender. Women are just as bad at leadership as men are. And she reminded us that reminded the nation of why Labor governments are always a really bad idea.
Okay, this is just going downhill really fast. Ala, I'm sure you have some lovely things to say.
I do. I thought she was really personable and relatable, which is why she struck a chord with many, various community groups and ethnic groups, etc. I personally thought her leadership expressed this kind of humanity that we don't really see in politics, maybe because it's just majority males. I don't know. You put those things together. And I like that she juggled being a mother whilst holding this really massive role in our country, and that she talked about some of those struggles with doing both. So I think that brought a reality to being a working mum as an expectant mum who's still working. I quite liked it about her leadership as well.
Lovely. See, I knew there was a reason Ala was on the panel. There was a very good reason.
Was nodding.
Christine, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would. I did struggle, but I believe she did actually handle the initial COVID response really well. Only the initial COVID response, it all turned to custard very quickly. But I think I was on health boards then, and I know the inside story. And had she let it run rampant, we would have collapsed. Our health system would have collapsed. So she started well. I do believe she was also generally kind. Much more kind than horrible Helen, who I had to contend with. And I believe that had Jacinda been there and not horrible Helen, what happened to me would never have happened. So,
I thought it was Steve Mahari that you had to contend with. I thought it was Steve Mahari that you had to contend with.
No, it was horrible Helen. Believe you me, she pulled all the strings. Bob worries when I start saying these things, but they're true. He's looking panicky at the moment, but there's more to come.
Now, Alfred
Tell more.
Alfred has got a kind bone in his body. Alfred, what do you reckon?
Oh, look, I'm like Ella. I mean, she's very personable, and look, I can remember that even when I would see her on the plane, she always came up and said hello. She had a great way of engaging with people. She's a good communicator, and she was able to sort of try and communicate as she thought best. And I think the last thing is that she said it in her speech that she was a conviction politician. Now, whether you agreed with her convictions or not is a different story, but she stood for three things she said, and that was climate change, child poverty, and the other one was inequality. I mean, those were her convictions. So, good on her for doing that.
Okay, Ashley, Ronji, final say.
Yes, I struggled with this a little bit as well, but I thought she was a really great promoter of New Zealand overseas, and I think that's actually going to affect her legacy because she was really good at talking about the country overseas, and so I thought that was a positive. I thought that she was the queen of spin. I don't know if that's a positive, but she was very good at it and very good at handling attacks and giving some good ones, but with a nice smile as well. So I thought, but one thing though I found interesting though was that I found with her that I was always amazed that she didn't hide her ideology. She didn't hide her socialist tendencies. It came out through her policies and her ideas and the way that she handled things. So yeah, I don't know if that's positive. That's my best attempt.
Okay, no, great. Now, Bruce hasn't got his hand up, but that's okay. We've changed tack. And I'm just going to make it two, to be honest, team. Two things that you didn't like about her legacy. Bruce, you can start this one.
Two things I didn't like?
Yeah.
I thought I said that. One thing that I'd like to put in there, though, I think she might have been very nice to have as your next door neighbour. I think she'd be very
lovely,
nice,
Bruce.
but she was a terrible Prime Minister.
Okay. Ashley, what did you have on your list of didn't likes?
Oh, two things. One, she divided our nation in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime, and I don't think anybody can deny that. She was the queen of division, and she grieves the slippery slope toward a more evil society as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Christine?
The country crumbled under her leadership, and anyone who could pass an abortion law that says an if aborted baby is born alive, no one must do anything to keep it that way is just beyond anything anyone in this world could be proud of.
Okay. Ala, do you agree with that?
Yes, and just to add to it, for a politician who got into politics for child poverty, she didn't do a lot to shift it or change it. She mentioned in her post-resignation announcement that she's had a good night's sleep for the first time in ages. I don't think the hundreds of Kiwi children living in poverty and living in cars can say the same.
Alfred?
Yeah, so I went on record as actually calling her a liar in Parliament, and this is around the abortion law reforms, and it related to the fact that she said no woman should ever be made to feel like a criminal. Well, the truth is that's a lie, because we passed the Contraception, Sterilisation and Abortion Law Act in the 70s, and so it's legal. It was still legal to have an abortion, but she used that as it's the word cliche, a phrase or an opinion that's overused but betrays a lack of original thought. And that's what she was good at. She kept on making things. She was like the smiling assassin. And I think what people don't realise behind that smile, even when, as Ashley said, she divided a nation, two types of citizens, she said, yep, and a big grin. And I think that's the most evil thing about her leadership, is that she seduced people with a smile, but beneath that, basically there was a planned attack on the family, on all these different values that she felt her conviction, I think, needs to be absolutely questioned. And I just, they never printed it, I wish they did, but I basically said that she lied to the nation, she lied to the people. And again, for her to get away with this, look, at just final words in the words of Barry Soper, he said that he's been around politics for the last 45 years. She has got to be the worst Prime Minister that this nation has ever had on a number of different indicators.
Okay. Ronji?
Hey, look, I agree with everything that the other panelists have said, but to maybe try and offer a couple of different things. She stuck to her knitting. Hey, that was her worldview. That was her ideology. She stuck to it. She stuck to her convictions, as munted as they were. And so I think when I was thinking about the legacy or the potential legacy, it's hopefully a little bit different to the other panelists. She failed. Her policies failed. She just didn't deliver on being transformative. That's what she campaigned on, to be a transformative government. And in all the areas that she talked about, and all the areas around social policy, especially the economy is munted right now because of that. A lot of that was due to her leadership and just failing in terms of delivering transformative policies for the nation. I think the only thing I'd add too is that she led to an opaque government. So because she was hard to get a hold of, all the other government ministers became really hard to get a hold of as well. They sort of hid behind bureaucracy. They hid behind smokes and mirrors. And so she actually ended up, all of her senior leaders ended up becoming just like her. And I think that's one of the legacies that's damaging for the future, especially for this election coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, panel, that what I found amazing was that, having watched politics for around 20 years, is just how sudden the fall was from being in a majority government, loved overseas, loved in the country, and then suddenly resigning because the writing was on the wall. And if I was to define what I think was a turning point, it was this particular interview.
You basically said this is going to be it's almost like, you probably don't see it like this, the two different classes of people. If you're vaccinated or if you're unvaccinated, you have all these rights. If you are vaccinated...
That is what it is, so yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you agree, panel, but I think that was when the tables turned, because even people who were vaccinated felt that there was something wrong about that division. I think that's what you were touching on, Ashley, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that sums her up. I mean, I think there was a couple of other points as well, the parliamentary protests and I think the hatchet job that Stuff tried to do with that Fire and Fury. But the combination of those three things, after that, it was just a matter of time she was gone.
Yeah. Okay.
And she's still putting... I was
Alfred.
just going to say, and she's still putting her rhetoric around the disinformation, right? Taking that down, her free speech, and trying to sort of work with, a number of the social media outlets around that. It's just a concern, because she feels like that's going to be her legacy, really concerning about the way that she's been given opportunities by this government for the future. So, yeah, it doesn't look bright for her.
Okay, Tim, we've just got a couple of minutes. Go, Rogie. Yep.
I was going to say, but I'm tired of talking about her, to be honest. Like, she's done. So I think we've got to move on. One thing I want to realize, though, is that it's the current politicians that we need to be worried about. So she's gone. She's moved on. God bless her. But I think her legacy is existing in the current Prime Minister who can't define what a woman is. It's existing in her senior leadership and cabinet who's making multiple messes and the Green Party that is in partnership with them is falling apart at the seams, and yet National doesn't seem to know how to take advantage of all of this well. So, look, she's gone, but it's the issues in front of us, it's the people in front of us that we really need to be worried about.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just finally, now you're all political experts, so let's just do a very quick analysis, and we're going to do this as we head up to the election, which is 180 days away. Bad news, sorry guys, 180 days to try and figure out who to vote for and whether you're going to have to hold your nose again. It's a dead heat according to the latest polls. It shows both National and Labour on 36%, give or take a few percent, ACT on 9.5, Greens on 6.7, Maori on 3. New Zealand First has dropped to 2.6 and all the other parties are under 5%. But that was actually a big drop for all those other parties. But it's the trend that's most interesting. Just show us that trend, Gordon. And you can see there that National increased, but they've sort of plateaued. Labour were decreasing, which is what Jacinda saw, the writing on the wall, and has now made some recovery with Chris Hickins in charge. And you'll actually note there that the Greens are sort of dropping a little bit, and some people are putting that down to the infighting going on with James Shaw, with the comments made by Marama Davidson, with Elizabeth Kerry calling Chloe a crybaby. So all is not peace in the Greens. So let's just quickly go around the panel. I just want your prediction. What are we going to see in 180 days? Because you are the political experts, and that's why I chose you. And so, Bruce, what are you predicting?
Well, I would like to see an ACT national coalition.
Is it going to happen?
I hope so. Rather than national government by itself, I'd like to see that coalition.
Okay. Christine?
Yeah, I think National Act will. Well, it is a bit hard to call at the moment, but I think it'll be a National Act government.
Ala?
I still think it's too early. I think it'll be a neck and neck. It'll be, National and Labour look the same to me right now, where people are picking the lesser of two evils. And they're both looking, as their policies come out, they're looking the same. So I'm undecided. Maybe New Zealand First.
They may be the kingmaker, and that'll really please Ashley. I do remember the election. I think was it 2005 when Don Brash almost beat Helen Clark, and it was only because Helen Clark pulled out the working for families and the interest-free student loans that got her. And that was all last-minute stuff. And then we had John Key having that cup of tea with John Banks. Do you remember that? So 180 days is a really, really long time. Ashley, what are you predicting?
Also, in contrast to Al, I'm delighted to see New Zealand First dropping. In fact, I'm putting that entirely down to my comments last week. So I reckon, I still think it's not going to be close. I think it's going to be a reasonably comfortable National and ACT alliance. But this is the unlosable election, and my worry is that despite what I just said, National still seems to be doing everything they can to lose the unlosable election, and that's the worry.
Ronji?
Yeah, it's National's election to lose, to be honest, and they're doing a really good job at it at the moment. So, look, the one I'm interested in is who's the kingmaker, because at this stage it's Te Pāti Māori, and so from a conservative perspective, is that something that we're comfortable with? Probably not. So if we're gonna, I know Ashley had talked about pushing, not wasting our votes to small parties, and so I guess we're going to make sure that if we don't want this current government, and you've got to vote for the ones that will get in. But yeah, that's hard.
Alfred?
Well, it feels like we're at a South Auckland street market where you're trying to buy a Nike and it's got two E's on it, and the seller tells you same, little different. And the truth is, left and right, they're both the same with very little difference. And I think it's like Ella, it's too early to call. But the thing is that Peter Dunn's reflection of it is language complacency is so true. There's a sense of entitlement, and Ashley's right. It's Nationals to win and Nationals to lose. And at the moment, we don't have a clear sense of people knowing. Just the last thing I want to say is that people need to pay attention to the undecided votes. So at the moment, when it comes to party votes, it's 10% of the vote. If you take it per capita, that's 500,000 votes. If you look at preferred Prime Minister, 33% are undecided. So at the moment, we've got a nation that are waiting to hear true vision, true values, and true leadership. And that's what people are wanting. And at the moment, no one's hearing it.
Okay, fantastic. Anything to add? No, all good. Panel, really appreciate your time. Ala, fantastic job. Where have you been all this time? Bruce, Ashley, Ronji, Alfred, Christine, thank you very much. And team, we will be back next Monday. There's no holidays until we get to Queen King's birthday at the beginning of June. So we're in for the long haul. So we will be back next Monday night at 8 o'clock. This is Straight Talk. Have a great week.
Okay.